It's 2 past 2 in Newcastle, Australia. It's 3:02 in Manchester, England. And this is the only place in the world where wearing Leopard-Print is considered a proper rugby league kit. Yes, you heard that right. This is the Sideline Chat podcast, the one-stop shop for rugby league. Along with Mark Henry, I'm Connor Marcellus, and today it is part 2 of the 2023 Betfred Super League preview. So let's jump right in, starting off with the other side of Hull, picking up from last week with Hull KR and their 2023 prospects.
Well, it wasn't much better than Hull FC overall. They pretty much were next to each other on the table. So, again, just that inconsistency cost them in 2022.
Hull KR recruited big at the start of 2022. If you're signing Lachlan Coote up, you've got balls to try and make that big signing. Didn't necessarily play out the way they would have hoped for.
Well, no, because he was injured a couple of times throughout the season too, which didn't help. Concussion,
and it's the same story. I think Jordan Abdul and Mikey Lewis were also missing for great portions of the season. I mean...
Yeah, you were right on that one.
27 rounds, plus any Challenge Cup commitments they might have had as well. But out of a possible 27 rounds, could only play 16 of those.
Yeah, it's a big loss. And if he was, concussion-free and all that for the whole season, then it could have been a different story for Hull KR, but you can't help concussions and that. So they're disappointing for them, and they would have definitely strive to be better this season than what they were last season, and they would have really hoped that they made the top 6 last year.
Well, I mean, it gets worse because Jordan Abdul doesn't even play a third of the season. He manages only 10 games all up, which is still about a third. But your most important players, your fullback and your halfback, or your scrum half, as you like to call it in the north of the world. But not having your first choices there week in, week out, you can't do that. You just can't get away with makeshift halves and fullbacks every week.
But they kind of had to do it in a way as well because of all the injuries and all that they occurred throughout the season. And like you're saying about Jordan Abdul playing, about 10 games, that was way down than what he did in 2021. In 2021, he was like one of the best players at the Rovers, and he just couldn't back it up last year. Hopefully he can get back to that form for this season.
By Easter, you'd think Hull KR are on the up. They had some pretty good results. Good Friday win against Hull in the derby, 16-4. Lucky to survive in that win over Toulouse, 28-24, before dispatching Wakefield. But the results after that, nil by Leeds, nil by Castleford, and they only managed equivalent of 2 tries against the Catalan Dragons. And then that happens again. Another 4-game losing run after they beat Salford 43-16. They get close because we definitely know the Robins overachieved in 2022. And realistically, I was concerned that they would not kick on after that semi-final finish to the Catalan Dragons.
And that's pretty much what happened, really, I think. But, like you said, you're just going all right, but then they just went downhill and don't know what happened there for them. Probably come back down to injuries and all the likes of missing their key players, like Lachlan Coote and Jordan Abdul. And like you said, their fullback and your halves are the key positions as well as your dummy half to have a team fit and firing, and that just didn't happen for them. They're just inconsistent with all the halves and fullbacks throughout the season.
One player that I felt like stood tall for the Robins didn't get much of the plaudits when you got the bigger names there. I mean, you got Cooch, you got Ryan Hall, Jordan Abdul, but still a big name in his own right, and that was the Robins captain, Sean Kenny-Dow. In a season with all ultimate disruption, changing spine seemingly weekly, 3 tries, 8 try assists, 2,319 run meters, 76 tackle breaks, 3 line breaks, and 32 offloads. I tell you what, if you're doing more than 30 offloads and 76 tackle breaks a year, you might be doing something right.
But that is something right, and we know what he's very capable of. And that's a pretty good captain's effort there in the side that just couldn't get going at the back end of the season.
Well, I definitely would say that, but it's just they struggled to back up that fairy tale run they had all the way into Perpignan, getting under the Catalan Dragons' skin in September of 2021, and falling away after that. I saw this coming, but
not to the extent
yeah,
that to the extent it happened.
yeah,
Quite honestly,
too many losing runs sandwiched in between very sparse wins. In first 10 rounds, you'd think, okay, maybe they could do it, but the middle or 10 really cost them at the end, and it was just
too little, too late to come back.
I will give them this. They did finish on a high, the final 2 wins of the year, downing the Wigan Warriors 38-28 at home, and then another win in the third Hull Derby meeting, downing Hull FC 36-4. So a confident finish, but really a disappointing year, which did cost Tony Smith his job partway through.
Yes, it did. And that finish too, against Wigan, that no one saw that coming really, because of how badly they'll perform in that middle 10 games. No one expected them to come out and beat Wigan.
Well, honestly, credit to Danny Maguire taking over 4 those final 8 games of the year, if I've got that right. No, 9. 5 and 4 he finished as a record, Danny Maguire. But of course, he will be succeeded by Willie Peters for this first year in charge of Hull KR. And I got to say, his roster rotation has certainly done enough. But on the outers,
there certainly has been a few outers at Hull KR, but they could be worth changes. So you got Albert Vete leaving to go to Castleford Tigers alongside Bailey Dawson, with Ben Crooks going to the Keighley Cougars, Tom Wilkinson heading to Dewsbury Rams, Halifax are picking up Will Maha, Adam Rustling, Nathan Cullen are both going to Cornwall, Corbin Sims has officially retired, Brad Tecarani, Tom Garrett, Charlie Kavanagh, and I already mentioned Tom Wilkinson, but they're yet to be decided to where they are.
Did you mention Tom Garrett? Because there's 2
Tom
Toms
Garrett.
at the Robins. Okay.
Yeah,
so
Brad Tecarani and Tom Garrett and Charlie Kavanagh all yet to decide where they're playing in 2023.
Now, on the other side of the equation, Mr. Peace's recruitment has been rather interesting. Picking up from the Paramount Eels, the centre Tom Opacek, who's really been a bit of a handy go-to man whenever Brad Arthur's needed him.
Yes.
Yusuf Aiden picked up from Wakefield Trinity, but overseas imports, don't end there. Reece Kennedy picked up from the Brisbane Broncos, Soaso Sue joining from the Newcastle Knights. James Batchelor defecting from Wakefield Trinity. Ultimately, he knows who's getting relegated this year. Lewis Senior from the Huddersfield Giants, and Sam Luckley picked up from Salford. I believe I did cover Yusuf Aiden being picked up from Wakefield as well. So how would you rate the Robins recruitment here?
Well, there was a bit of a rampage on the NRL. There were Tom Opacek and Soaso Silva and Reece Kennedy. Like, we know what Opacek's were quite capable of, and Reece Kennedy as well. Soaso Silva, he's been in and out of sights too much, so it's hard to get a read on him. But Lewis Senior and James Batchelor, they're really good signers for Hull KR.
The right edge back row competition is going to get interesting because you've got Frankie Holton already at the club, and he's been given the number 11 squad number, having been promoted up from 27. So it's going to be interesting to see who starts between him and Batchelor come round 1.
Be flip of a coin, I reckon, or whoever's trained a house down at training.
Well, that would be the interesting key to it. Who's impressed more in the pre-season? Now, first 5 rounds of the year, and this is where it's towards the wrinkle. First up, a home game, but it's up against the Wigan Warriors.
But they did beat them in the second last game last year.
Well, it's a fresh year, fresh start. It counts for nothing now.
I know, but still, that confidence will potentially help them carry on. I don't know, depending how Wigan go.
First away trip will be up against Salford at the AJ Bell Stadium. I know you're going to be happy about that one.
Of course.
Followed by back-to-back home games against the Leigh Leopards and the Warrington Wolves. I could probably think...
They're winnable.
Which Leigh rocks up? The Leigh that everyone thinks is going to get relegated, or the Leigh that actually, 4th time's the charm, actually manages to stay in the top flight?
Well, we don't know, really.
Well, we'll answer those questions
Well,
very
also,
soon.
what Warrington side are we going to get too?
Another question in and of itself. Finally wrapping up round 5 against the Catalan Dragons in the south of France.
Yeah, I don't like Hull KR's chances there, but you never know. Like you said, new year, new season, anything can happen.
Honestly, I think this looks like a winnable 2 from 5 opening fixtures. Warrington might be a toss of a coin. I could probably think competitive against Salford, should get a win against Leigh.
Yeah, sure.
Wigan and Catalan are probably in the bruh, why would you even think they're a chance zone?
Yep.
So, with Willie Peters now in charge, having served as assistant coach to Adam O'Brien at Newcastle, what is the one thing he needs to get right early on for the Robins to be any chance of a playoffs finish?
Probably getting his spine 100% right, keep him fit, and get them to click together and make him do wonders. Like, really, that's the key area to spine.
I think there's something else to it. I think there was those tight contests, those 50-50 games that could have gone either way. Magic Weekend against Hull SC was certainly one, and that could have gone their way, but somehow the Black and Whites managed to pull it out of the fire. Toulouse, that was one that almost got away from them. They can't afford games like that. Would you agree to that?
Have to agree with that one. It's just like the close contests, really. And they have like a healthy lead. They just can't afford to slack off and defend that lead. They need to kick on with it, and that's what was a bit of an issue for them last season.
But other than that, I think the Robins, despite you look at half the side they have on paper, or what we think are going to line up round one: Lachlan Coote, Sean Kenny-Dow, Ryan Hall, Mikey Lewis. Some talented forwards in there as well. I mean, Reece Kennedy, point to prove. I mean, he's been in and around the Broncos side for probably the last 3 to 5 years at this point. As sort of like a reliable forward. Those handy forwards you can stick alongside your superstars like Payne Haas, or even and against your suspension and injury prones like Kobe Hetherington, Tom Egler. Tom Opacek, of course, was this big talent at the Broncos before finding his way to Parramatta. And then, even then, reliability. There's the reliable, but you need the superstars.
Exactly.
My question is, can the Robins manufacture a superstar talent that can get them over the line? I mean, you look at half the sides at the top of the table. How many England players does Warrington have? How many of them are playing at St Helens?
Multiple.
What about Wigan?
Multiple.
Or just how many overseas players can the Wigan Warriors squeeze into one spine at once that
That's true.
train the house down and just blitz the competition aside like butter?
Yeah. Look, it's a bit of a tough read to get on Hull KR. It's just maybe give them a week or two to settle in and hopefully they go well. I like to see them do well anyway.
I think readjustment, new coach, we really don't know what to expect right here. So last year, the Robins finished 8th on the table, having, of course, like we said, for our first season, finishing in the semi-finals. I think they'll miss out on the playoffs again. They'll be I wouldn't say mid-table, but sort of like around that third quarter of teams that could have made the top 6 but didn't. So I'm going to say the Robins finished 9th on the table.
I reckon they could just pip in to the playoffs, but probably get knocked out week 1. So I'm going to say they finished in 6th in 2023.
So one that says scrape in with not that many recognised star quality for...
Well, you got like Ryan Hall, who's... But he was
true.
pretty quiet last year too, in my opinion. So get him going, they should be sweet.
Well, 15 tries, I suppose you could say. By his lofty standards for try scoring, that is relatively quiet.
He's usually like getting 20 plus or 25
Well, you'd
plus.
expect him to score more than 20 tries a season. But again, quality of talent. And I think this is still something the Robins do lack. So I think one that says that it'll just squeeze into the playoffs. The other one that says miss them by a long margin. Now, moving on. Mr. Leopard-Print of the competition, the Leigh Leopards, after a radical rebrand and a controversial jersey design.
Yeah. Former Centurions blitzed the championship and they're welcome back into the Super League again under a new name and everything.
A 26-1 record in the Betfred Championship. Now, many people would have thought Featherstone would have been, after the last couple of years getting cock-blocked, getting into the top flight, they thought, finally, Toulouse are out of the way. There is no Toronto. Surely, for Featherstone, this was their time. And then, fun fact, it wasn't.
No.
Adrian Lamb joining the Leigh side, having left the Wigan Warriors after 2021, and really took the side, really no prisoners. It was really for the championship, Leigh's to lose.
Exactly. Kind of very similar to what Toulouse did in 2021.
Yeah, exactly. It was exactly like that.
But
Though
I think
Toulouse did play less games because half the sides couldn't travel to France anyway.
Yeah,
But no
still.
restrictions. Leigh rarely conceded really more than a try a game. There were only a couple of fixtures out of all 29 games they played where they conceded bigly. Round 22, for instance, high-scoring affair, beating Barrow 52-20. Other times they'd win 36-0, more respectable. Then we got against Bradford 56-6, 66-0 against Workington against the lower end, 60-6 against Dewsbury. They were just scoring tries for fun.
Plus that big 100 and something point win or whatever it was, 100.
Yeah, I believe that was in a other competition or might have involved another club entirely.
Oh, I thought it was in the championship anyway.
But no, yeah, you're right. Leigh had a blitz of a year in 2022 and almost got upstaged by the Batley Bulldogs in the £1 million game, you would have to say.
Yeah, it could have been a bit of a surprise result there, but in the end, the Leopards, aka the
Centurions, as they were
Centurions
once
at the
known.
time, sorry, they prevailed somehow.
Well, I wouldn't say somehow. They just dug in. I mean, they did pick up a couple of players mid-year. Lachlan Lamb came mid-year. Josh Charnley came mid-year. Blake Ferguson joined after enjoying his stay in I wouldn't say a weak Tokyo prison, but he certainly didn't break out of it easily.
No, he certainly did not. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, that is a story for another day. And then, of course, we've got to talk about that controversial kit design that went with the rebrand.
Yes, it wasn't it's still not the prettiest of jerseys. Isn't it something different, though?
It's something different. I mean, the Leigh Leopards, the alliteration in the brand name rolls off the tongue. But in Derek Beaumont's case, why did he have to make it like a jacket he would wear with Leopard-Print skin on it?
Honestly,
I mean,
don't know.
seriously. It was like, we saw the drop when he released it in black and white. Everyone got upset. It was like, red and white's our colours. Don't go changing the colours. So, of course, he changed them back. Still didn't excuse the fact it's like a giant leopard on the front of Leigh's kit for this year. And then the away kit. Really? Black and, what was it, like an aqua teal or something like that?
Something like that.
But, I mean, imagine being a Leigh fan and realising that's the kit you're probably going to buy for £50.
Even if I was a Leigh supporter, I probably would have been getting that.
My God.
It's kind of like
Why?
the worst design in the Super League this season.
That has got to be amongst one of the all-time clangers for kit
Who's
design.
the manufacturer for it?
Elgren,
Elgren.
who also handle Wakefield's kits as well. But
Well, they did all right with Wakefield, but don't know where they went wrong with the Leopards.
Yeah, Jesus.
If I was the Leopards, I'd be looking
If
for
you
somewhere
come up with
else.
a good idea of the big cats, because I mean, like, you got tigers, you got panthers, either side of the world, then you're just like, oh, there's no one who goes with the name of the Leopards. Let's do this and make this our thing.
Yeah.
And then it just looks absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Halifax did the same thing a couple of years prior, but at least Halifax Panthers made theirs look tasteful.
Yes.
They just embraced the mascot, the panther, without radically redesigning their kits to look like a bloody panther.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, I think Derek Beaumont said it's something to the tune of hold my Leopard-Print and I'll see what I can come up with to Halifax. And yeah, that was the result.
Yeah, not the prettiest of jerseys at all.
Now, first 5 rounds back for Leigh. 4th time in Super League.
Can they stay in there
Unbelievable.
for more than a year?
Well, this is the 4th time in 23 years they've been a part of the first flight, and this is the challenge they are left with moving forward. Round 1, they get a game in front of the Sky Sports cameras at home against and Paul Rowley's Salford Red Devils.
I mean, if anything's to go by previous years, surely Salford should get the win on that one.
And of course, as we touched on last week, an away trip to the Catalan Dragons. And of course, France isn't usually a happy hunting ground for anyone.
No.
Well, unless you're one of the good sides. Because
yeah, but like they're bottom part of the table.
Craven Park, they'll go up against Hull KR, as we just touched on as well. Well, that one can go either way, depending on which side rocks up.
Yep.
Back at home against the reigning champions.
Well, you
probably
might as well
not
just
going to be
pack
jet
up and
lagged.
go home now.
You probably would, because they're not going to be as jet lagged as what you probably would think of them. And finally, to round off in round 5, as soon as I load the fixtures up, because it's not arranged the same way the NRL prefer to do it, an away trip to Warrington.
It's depending on what Warrington side would get as well.
I think we'll get the Warrington that will just roll over the top of them and not get upset by them.
Possibly.
But like the Robins, a radical roster management program is undertaken at the Leigh Sports Village. And I gotta say, they're not screwing around right here.
No, certainly not. They have lost Lewis Roberts and Nene McDonald who are going to the Leeds Rhinos. Adam Sidley and Sam Stone are both heading to Salford. Mark Ione is going to Keighley Cougars. Atta Hingano is going to York. Kieran Dixon to the Widnes Vikings. Jai Hitchcock to Rochdale Hornets. And Christian Inu has retired. And Caleb Aikens, we don't know where he's heading off to.
Chris Green has also entered retirement prematurely. And as for Caleb Aikens, he's been signed up to play under Sean Long at the Featherstone Rovers. Now, of course, hefty, as well as letting Blake Ferguson go mid-year, having signed him mid-year, these are also the other signings they've made. They have made 11 additional signings to what mid-year transfers they did pick up. Gareth O'Brien getting picked up from the Castleford Tigers. No doubt he will be in contention for a fullback spot, despite being named or numbered 17. 5 signings from the Warrington Wolves in addition to Josh Charnley, Jacob Gannon, Oliver Holmes, Robbie Mulhern, and Matt Davis. Let's bring the total of Warrington in stars to 5. Ollie Holmes, we already mentioned that. Tom Briscoe and Zach Hardacre picked up from the Leeds Rhinos, as well as Yumila Hanley from the Wigan Warriors. As Nathan Wild also picked up from the Newcastle Thunder.
And you've also got Ricky Latelli from Huddersfield.
Yep.
Aaron Smith and Tom Newsbet from St. Helens.
Well, Aaron Smith, I think he's still continuing his loan spell with Leigh at the moment.
Well, there you go.
Considering, we'll talk about the St. Helens dimensions later, but it is sort of, it frees a crowd for dummy halves at St. Helens. Like, you got James Roby, probably amongst the best of all time. We'll touch on this. So I think for Aaron Smith, career-wise, this is sort of the best place for him to be at the moment.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there.
Mind you, he's probably going to have to take a backseat to Edwin Apape. Huge raps on this Papua New Guinea international, or a lot of raps on him going through the championship and potentially setting Super League alight.
Potentially, if he's got the right team around him as well.
Well, Adrian Lamb's put this one together. I mean, not just picking up sons of club greats like those of Ellery Hanley, but his own son to play at scrum half, giving him the number 7 jumper.
Not favourite at all. No favouritism.
Well, I mean, he is amongst the first choice halves.
Yeah,
there.
I know.
It is practically him and Joe Mellor. O'Brien is a potential, although he could end up at fullback, despite signing Zach Hardacre there, but I think Hardacre's talents lie more in the centres these days than they do at fullback, where he did make a name for himself at the Leeds Rhinos and Castleford.
Yep. I have to go with you there. And give him game time and space. Well, he's quite capable of doing wonders.
So, undisputed kings of the Betfred Championship class of 22, who finishing first and being crowned £1 million game champion, ends in a emphatic display over the Batley Bulldogs, overcoming a rough challenge. Where do Leigh's fortunes lie in 2023?
They've got like a fair few brilliant signings like Zach Hardacre, Tom Briscoe, Gareth O'Brien, and you could also chuck in Ricky Lutelli. They are very quality signings there, but whether or not how they perform overall under Adrian Lamb is a wait-and-see contest. Like, do they continue on from the championship because they've been in the Super League before, they know how it all runs, or do they just sit stone dead last and get a couple of wins like Toulouse did?
Well, again, this is the fourth time they have made it into the top flight. 2005 failed, or to stay up. 2017 lost in the £1 million game. 2021 they were easily the worst side out of all 12 of them because they were rushed in after Toronto were expelled.
Yep.
Buying a new side, I mean, you look at all these names right here. Leaders like Jack Hughes, Ollie Holmes, Zach Hardacre, all big match experience. Most of them have all played in grand finals. Yep. Some of them have got multiple rings to their name, especially the ex-Leeds players, as like Briscoe, Hardacre. Hughes has got a ring from his time with Wigan. But does it automatically translate to success? And I think that is the question we need to answer. Not always the case. And they've got a pretty rough ride for the first 5 rounds. And then, of course, you got to factor in Challenge Cup commitments, and injuries will play a huge part. And it's a pretty thin roster. Like Salford, they've got probably a pretty light roster they're working with. So they can't really afford too many injuries.
No, they certainly can't there. But whether or not, it's how they maintain them. And Adrian Lamb is a pretty experienced coach. He knows what he's talking about and that. So he's still got all this learning to do, but how he manages the players and that will be the question. See how far he can go with them.
The change of scenery, I think, did Adrian Lamb a world of wonder. I mean, he had I suppose you couldn't say he failed during his stint at the Wigan Warriors, but 2021 certainly wasn't his best year on record. Last year, he blitzes the championship completely with his experience, his approach, and of course some of the players he did have, like McDonald, Asiata, Ataringano, Edwin Apape emerging as a name to really pay attention to, and of course coming off a big quarterfinals finish with Papua New Guinea at the Rugby League World Cup just gone. The goal is not to make the playoffs. It'd be nice, but I think realistic expectation is they are not finishing in the top 6.
No way. Not when you got like the other clubs sniffing around.
However, this time around, 4th time's the charm, I am backing them to finish inside the top 11. Very wide pool, but I am backing them for the first time in 23 years of top flight challenges and failing. I'm going to back the Leigh Leopards to scrape into the top flight for 2024. Last year finishing 1st in the championship. This year, I say they will scrape into the top flight status, finishing 11th.
Wow. Yeah, well, like, what a signings that they've got some really key signings there, but I think they're going to struggle yet again. It's going to be another poor year for the Leopards, even though with the rebranded Adrian Lamb at the helm. They could sprint a surprise here and there, but I see them getting relegated back to the championship. So finishing stone dead last again. But not losing by like a heap. It would be like maybe a win or two in it between 11th with for me it's Hull FC and then Leigh. Maybe like 2 competition points in it.
So you reckon
2
it will
or 4
probably come down to the final round or final rounds, and to decide who goes down and who stays up.
Yep, but I still reckon it'll be the Leopards.
Fair enough.
I've got so much faith in them.
And one that is going to put the perennial curse on them, that they can't stay in the top flight for longer than 1 year.
It could happen, you just don't know.
Now, speaking of clubs that stay longer in the top flight, we are talking about the Leeds Rhinos. And my God, what a story 2022 unfolded for them.
Mate, it was so up and down for them. It was not funny. They were starting up, then they just absolutely collapsed. And then somehow made it through to the playoffs.
11 rounds in, Richard Agar gets the punt. Thereabouts. Might have even been a few weeks before. But the Leeds Rhinos, from their first 2 months, only 1 win and 1 draw to show for it. With a side that, on paper, you'd think, surely, promising English talent, veteran halves imported from Australia. Where's the grand finals going to come from? Especially after we won the Challenge Cup a couple of years prior. But no, it pretty much goes to Bob, and Richard Agar has no choice but to step down.
Yes. Because he knew it was coming, though, so he did it on his own terms instead of waiting for the club to sack him.
Well, he probably was sacked anyway. They just pretended he stood down and taking ownership of the crisis that was unfolding ahead of him. But at one point, they are running 11th on the table despite winning against Toulouse and, of course, the draw against Huddersfield during the Easter period. But that 20-all draw, that was a thriller in of itself.
That was an absolute cracker of a game. Probably one of the best, not the best of the season, but up there. Probably in the top 10 of best games.
But that's not the most remarkable part of the Leeds Rhinos story in 2022. What happens after Rowan Smith joins?
He completely transformed them.
I'd say from 11th in late April, they go through the campaign as if nothing went wrong. They do get touched up here and there by the reigning champions, of course, as you'd expect.
That was to be expected, yeah.
But they do some service up for their own, and this gorgeous period between round 20 and round 25, they had going 5 straight wins. They knocked off the Wigan Warriors as 7 tries to 2.
That was
and
unexpected.
Wigan were dominating. We were calling a Wigan St Helens grand final. Well, many were probably thinking it was a Wigan St Helens grand final going on, and then Leeds come out of nowhere and it's like, I'm going to touch you up right here. Just going to slap you up from side to side. All right. You touch us up in round 2? Well, let us return the favour.
Exactly. And that was probably one of the most unexpected results all season long.
And then they did it again. They finished 5th on the table, having been threatened with relegation or in the drop zone for relegation. They finished 5th. They upset Catalan and Perpignan. Then they beat the Wigan Warriors at their own game.
I know.
James Bentley, I remember saying on this very platform, James Bentley, the standout, rigorous defence, knocked Wigan out of their rhythm, and 2 tries from James Bentley sent them into their first grand final in 5 years.
I'm getting near relegated.
It is a remarkable turnaround that Rowan Smith was able to pull off.
Very similar. I know there's more teams over here in NRL, but it's like with the Canterbury Bulldogs. They were down near the bottom, and then they brought Mick Potter, and then I know they didn't quite make the finals.
Not the same thing.
No, but like the turnaround that they did is
it would be nice
similar.
if Canterbury actually finished 8th on the ladder and made it to the grand final.
I know that, but like the turnaround,
year, but that didn't happen, and that wasn't the case.
But the mid-season turnarounds for both of them are pretty similar, though.
I would honestly think this is close to on par with the 2015 Cowboys side. Slow start, 0-3, a lot of questions, and then they defy all the odds to finish not just in the grand final, but walk away with the premiership.
Yeah.
Sort of similar to that. And I think the 2009 Eels would be a good story as this as well. They're down near the bottom 4, or on the table. They have a golden run at the back end of the year, knock the Dragons out in the first week of the finals completely, and then they make it all the way to the grand final, although losing, but it's still a remarkable achievement.
Well, technically, they won after with the Storm.
The grand final wasn't awarded to them. It's just been vacated.
Yeah.
So they didn't win. They were just cheated out of a grand final.
Yeah.
But losing the St. Helens, they saved their worst performance for later in the year with St. Helens. After that golden run they practically had, despite the upset loss to Toulouse, they were well in contention, and especially after knocking Wigan off, right then and there, you would have thought the Leeds Rhinos could have pulled off a fairy tale win reminiscent of their 2011 triumph.
That would have been an absolute miracle of a story, wouldn't it? Like, seriously, imagine the headlines it would have made.
It would have been another grand final or win for this proud club from West Yorkshire.
But even just from like near the relegation zone and to go through and then like, well, what close to win it. Well, I wouldn't say close to win it, but like made a grand final. But if they won it, the headlines we would have made would have been unbelievable.
Well, honestly, St. Helens were just well and truly on a different level to them.
Oh, hands down.
I mean, just within the first half, they were up like practically 2 tries to nothing. They were well in control of that grand final, on their way to 4 in a row.
Yeah.
So to be the 4th victim of St. Helens, would you say it's an honour, or would you say it's a deflating end to the year, despite tremendous progress made?
I'd say deflating end to the season, considering the back end of the season run that they had.
And I think there were 2 players that stood head and shoulders above the rest, mainly because some of them do stand head and shoulders above the rest. Ash Handley from the flank, and for me, 17 tries, 2 try assists, 3,646 run meters, 79 tackle breaks, 20 line breaks, and 18 offloads.
Yep, that's a successful campaign for Handley.
I mean, he was getting Leeds out of trouble and onto the front foot instantly. And in a rotating backline where the likes of David Fuzzatua, Harry Newman, and Liam Sutcliffe were all rotating in and out of the side, the one consistency was Ash Handley, who I'm befuddled is not a more regular England winger, representing England more often.
But you had to look to see who's he stuck behind too. So,
and the other talent I considered to be the standout for Leeds, Mikolaj Ledski. 3 tries, 2 try assists, 2,768 run meters, 48 tackle breaks, 2 line breaks, and 12 offloads. A solid performer in the Leeds engine room.
very solid indeed there, and that's what really got them pretty much going at the back end from April, whatever it was, and make that fairy tale run.
Now, looking at the first 5 fixtures, it has not been a kind draw. There are some interesting challenges, but there are also some winnable ones. First up, the Betfred Super League season opener against the Warrington Wolves at the Halliwell Jones Stadium.
50-50.
I would call it that way. Then the first home game of the year, here in round 2, up against the Black and Whites of Hull FC.
That should be a winnable game.
I definitely think so. A packed out Headingley Stadium would solve a lot of things for them. March the 3rd, grand final rematch day against the reigning champions. Only their second game back from the World Club Challenge. How do you think they'll pull up after that?
You think St. Helens will win, but like you said, a couple of weeks back from over in Australia, they still could be a little bit of jet lag. So Leeds might be able to pull that one off.
Another home game up against Wakefield. They'll crush them instantly.
That's a win.
And I would say a highly competitive game out at the Jungle against Castleford.
Yeah, it will be competitive. Very competitive indeed. I don't know which way it will go, but it'll be a competitive match.
I can either see a 3-2 from 5, or in the best case scenario, they can go 4-1. Probably only dropping against St. Helens.
Yeah, it's really...
I'd probably see it that way.
It's just depending on how they do against what happens in a Warrington match, really. Yes, that's probably a real 50-50 one there is, alongside the Castleford one.
Now, speaking of Castleford, they've had a couple of departures going that way out to the Jungle. Muzzy Mustafa will join Lee Radford's side this year. Jack Broadbent also heads that way, despite being the worst kept secret in rugby league. Of course, leaving Leeds midway to join Featherstone for the rest of the championship campaign before finally being announced he's wearing black/orange and amber, or orange/amber, I should say, in 2023. Alex Meller also heading out that way, but he left in the middle of the year. Bodine Thompson backflipping on retirement to link up with the the Bradford Bulls in 2023. Brad Dwyer joining Hull FC. Jack Walker also heading out that way to the Bulls. Liam Sutcliffe joining Hull FC. He, of course, as we just touched on, Tom Briscoe, Zach Hardacre joining the Leigh Leopards, despite Hardacre only linking up with them midway through the year. And former captain Matt Pryor retiring at the age of 35.
Very solid performance there. But they are gaining from Castleford, believe it or not. Darryl Alford, Lewis Roberts, and Nene McDonald from the Leigh Leopards. James McDonald from the Wigan Warriors. Sam Lassoni from the Gold Coast Titans, Justin
Sangare.
Sangare, from Toulouse Olympique, Toby Warren from York, Luke Hooley from the Batley Bulldogs, and Leon Ruan from Doncaster.
Very impressive recruitment drive, especially of championship talent. Because I think Hull KR brought on Frankie Holton last year, and he came on in leaps and bounds with the Robins. Now Rowan Smith's really looking at the championship and developing the next big thing to come along. And I mean, Justin Sangare is a very interesting talent. The French international leaving Toulouse to link up with the Leeds Rhinos. I think this could be a good power play right here.
It certainly can be in a side that last year... Well, he's had Super League experience.
Oh, of course. He played
season.
that whole year with Toulouse, and then, of course, he joins a very formidable forward-pack combination. At full strength, mind you, you would have Zane Tedovano, Mikolai Oledzki, James Bentley, Reece Martin, Cameron Smith, Jared O'Connor you'd probably throw in there as a dummy half / loose forward utility. You throw Sangare in there with Sam Nassone, you got yourself a powerful engine room right there.
You certainly do there. And that could do a lot of damage, and teams could be threatened by it.
Nene McDonald, I think, Leigh exhausted their overseas quota. You're only allowed to have, I think, maximum 7 players. He was number 8, so Sayonara McDonald. To fill the centre void, because I think this will be the big test for the Leeds Rhinos in 2023. They don't have that many recognised centres with, I'd probably think, more than 30 games experience under the belt.
No, it's a bit poor in that department, but they could work on them and build them up.
So Harry Newman was injury prone all throughout the last couple of years. Nene McDonald comes across, starting to make that transition into centre, having spent the majority of his career as a first-class winger. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they got nowhere else to go. If McDonald and Newman go down, they don't have many quality centres or pure or first-choice centres anyway.
That could let them down. Like I said, those two go down. Where are they going to get it from, though? Like, seriously?
Well, maybe put a winger in the centres. I think Darrell Olferts would be one example. Maybe Liam Tyndall. Jack Broadbent would have been perfect for that environment. Otherwise,
no
Max
there.
Smith would be another name I'd probably throw up, but I wouldn't risk it. Or even Reece Martin in the centres, Morgan Gannon into the back row. That'd probably be another way of looking at it.
Because I think Reece
Martin has got that left edge back row nailed down big time.
Yep. Because I believe Reece Martin has played a bit of centres before, has he?
Yep. Yeah, he has started in the centres.
Over here in Australia?
Nah, not necessarily. No.
Not necessarily? No, I thought he might have, but anyway.
Now, moving forward, could Rowan Smith suffer second-year syndrome and Leeds go backwards despite making the grand final?
I hope not. I seriously hope not. That momentum, like I keep saying about it, sounds like a broken record, but the run that they had back in the season, they need to carry that on into 2023. And if they can't do that, well then, it's disappointing to see.
I think they can kick on with this. I think they got that taste, and I hope certainly Leeds' spirit of success is rewarded here. They've got a settled spine, Myler, Austin, Caesar, Cruz Leeming, all available for the start of the year. Hopefully, a clean bill of health. James Bentley doesn't get suspended that much or red carded too often because he's
a bit prone to it.
There's questions he still might face some disciplinary action for his drunken performance against England coach Sean Wayne, to put it mildly. So there's still a bit of question about that. But more than likely, he probably will start round 1 against Warrington somehow without facing punishment. But I think Leeds Rhinos will kick on from buoyed by having that grand final taste once more. And I think they'll be ready to go for another good year. Maybe not in the grand final, but they'll certainly be in the playoffs mix. Last year, they finished 5th in the grand final as runners-up. I think they go one better, finishing 4th on the table.
You read my mind. I'll say they finished 4th too. That just continue on from 2022's back end of the season and see how far they can go into the playoffs.
That's always the question of can they back up a losing grand final performance. So we'll just have to wait and see on that front. Now, at long last, for this part in particular, we finally come to the Salford Red Devils.
I have to say, I'm pretty happy with how they did 2022. They made the playoffs. They were 80 minutes away from the grand final, but fell short to St. Helens. But it wasn't by much, though. They did give it to St. Helens, but I think they were more determined to lose it than what they were to win it.
Well, 8 losses in the first 11 games is not good enough.
Well, no.
Especially with the recruiting they had done. I mean, Brodie Croft, he was much maligned, of course, during his time at the Broncos, coming up to Salford, and I said straight away, you're just going to throw him into the fire once again, this time at the wrong end of the spectrum, and you're going to get relegated. I had Salford dead and buried with Brodie Croft playing standoff.
And guess what? Brodie Croft got Man of Steel.
Yes. Somehow
he blitzed it. Absolutely blitzed it.
Whether that's down to...
Not being biased.
Well, of course, there's bias, and then, of course, there's always the argument he got paid less money, and, of course, he's the superior athlete that was leading it across. But, again, if he was the superior athlete, why didn't Salford make the grand final against Leeds?
Because, yeah.
Riddle me that, Batman.
A bit hard to.
Exactly the point.
But having Mark Sneed alongside Brodie Croft too probably helped him a lot too. Like a young guy like Brodie Croft had troubles trying to get regular starting time in the NRL. It's gone over there. Mark Sneed's had plenty of experience. He took control of the game, Sneed, which allowed Brodie Croft to run the ball, which is, I think that's what he really needed to do, and he's absolutely nailed it.
This was probably the first halves combination where Brodie Croft was not thrown in at the deep end, of course. Cooper Cronk retires in leaves the Roosters in 2017. Croft becomes the first choice halfback at Melbourne for the 2018 season. He gets axed in favour of, was it Riley Jacks or Jerome Hughes?
Might have been a mixture of two.
Both of them.
Yep.
Cameron Munster, of course, was his main foil. Didn't necessarily work out, but he worked his way back in, and he was in the grand final, lost to the Roosters that year. Practically same story happened in 2019. They tried to back him as the first choice half, got shifted around, Pappenhausen comes into the equation, big money at the Broncos, and it went belly up for him big time.
Well, we had Anthony Milford on his side too.
And that did nothing for him.
No.
He was signed by the Broncos as sort of the messiah to answer the prayers not heard since Alfie Langer was the halfback of the Broncos, and it failed.
Yep.
He joined Salford last year, and in that team environment, an experienced half, a lot of players just sort of like, well, half of the comp's basically written us off at this point, so let's make something of it.
Yep, and he absolutely blitzed it. And like I said, having that experience with Mark Sneed alongside him really did help him. And they usually, players on the NRL tend to go over to England to try and revive their careers, and that's what's really happened with Brodie Croft here. Whether or not he can back it up again this season, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, of course, the best player, as we usually do when it comes to picking the best player in our previews for the year, it's either the Man of Steel or the Dally M player that's recognised regardless of who it is. Basically, out of now 29 clubs, 27 of them are purely subjective, but only 2 are imperial fact. And it's the best player in the comp, Brodie Croft of Steve Prescott, Man of Steel. 7 tries, 25 try assists, 2,761 run meters, 83 tackle breaks, 23 line breaks, and 18 offloads.
Like I said, the more times he ran the ball, the more dangerous he got. And he's got some speed on him too.
Oh, he's no slouch. I think we already knew that watching him from his time in Melbourne and Brisbane. He's no slouch out with the ball.
It just didn't really have that chance to be what he wanted to do.
How many times has Brodie Croft in the Salford colours almost dragged them kicking and screaming to 2 points?
Multiple times. I lost count.
Magic weekend against Huddersfield was a good example because he basically tried to turn that game back into Salford's favour before Huddersfield just overpowered them at the end. And I mean, down 18-0, Croft runs the ball once, gets to the try line, and suddenly Salford changed the complete momentum of the game.
Yeah. I think he even tried doing that in the semi-finals against St. Helens, tried dragging them back into it, but too many errors cost him in that match. But even he was in doubt for that match too, or the one before.
The left edge of Salford really started to find something. You had Croft at standoff, Tim Laffey seemingly revived his career in the space of a year as well.
Yes.
He went from playing reserve of grade football at Parramatta to playing in the World Cup final for Samoa off the back of a good year at Salford. You couldn't put Tim Laffey down.
No, you
Joe
could not.
Burgess, ever reliable try scorer, seems to have found a groove since leaving Wigan a second time.
Yes.
And then, of course, also I think, who's the main left edge back row?
He had...
Was it... Harvey Levett was amongst
he was amongst it all.
the candidates, but he didn't see that much game time going on.
I think that's a position where that chopped and changed a little bit too much. So I had to say that. Also, Callum Watkins, he had a reasonable season, and Dion Cross,
Dion Cross was a find.
He come out
Easily
of nowhere.
He was a find. I think they plucked him out of the championship as well.
I think so, but he came absolutely out of nowhere and was scoring nearly every game he played.
Well, when he had Croft and Sneeve pulling the strings for him, I wouldn't be that surprised.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I was very, very happy with Salford's performance in 2022. I was just disappointed that it didn't make the grand final.
A pleasant surprise, nonetheless, for many Greater Manchester supporters of the Salford Red Devils. Now, to mark the 150th anniversary along another host of clubs, 2 of them we'll cover next week, celebrating 150 years in the top flight. Of course, 12 of those years had to be as a rugby union club. Disgusting.
But still goes towards the history.
But many, many more glorious years, 127 of them, as a rugby league club, varying levels of success throughout their time. But here they are on a very important birthday for them. And this is how their first 5 rounds shape up. They travel away again. They actually get a bit of a run of telecast games here on Sky Sports.
Sweet!
First up, of course, we touched on against Leigh at the Leigh Sports Village.
Salford win.
Round 1. Round 2, at home to the Robins, also on Sky Sports.
Salford win.
Round 3, away against the Warrington Wolves.
Depending on what Warrington side we get up, but if we continue on, should be another win for us.
So 3 telecast fixtures to open the year before an away game against Hull SC and a home game against Wakefield.
Win. They
Probably,
are winnable games.
I probably think 3-2 is Salford's best scenario. Hell no, that not be eating Wigan. Oh, well, that's the Sam Powell testimonial.
Yeah, that's the testimonial.
Actually, 3-2, 4-1, either way, you could look at that. That's probably both
I
realistic
think the
expectations.
I reckon the most iffy game is depending on what happens with Warrington.
Yeah, I'd probably say that.
But I don't know. I think they're winnable. Like, pretty much all of them are winnable.
Now, meantime, they have made some adjustments to their roster. Elijah Taylor, once the captain, now leaving to join the Featherstone Rovers. A double departure to Barrow, Greg Burke and Jack Wells leaving. Harvey Levett linking up with Ian Watson at the Huddersfield Giants. Of course, was influential Salford coach who got them to the grand final and the Challenge Cup up in 2019-2020. Morgan Escaray joining in Carcassonne in the French Elite Championship, and Sam Luckley departing for Hull Kingston Rovers.
And Sitaliki
Akawala linking up with Toulouse Olympique.
But Salford have signed Oliver Partington from the Wigan Warriors, Adam Sidlow and Sam Stone from the Leigh Leopards, Andrew Dixon from Toulouse Olympique, Ben Hallowell from Featherstone, and Ellis Longstaff from Warrington. On a loan deal from Warrington.
That's exactly right. So, all new back row and all new forward pack combinations going down right there, but the back line's relatively unchanged.
Same with the halves. Well, that's unchanged. And dummy half too, that's unchanged as well.
I think that there was concerns raised that outside Andy Ackers and Amir Burrow, there really wasn't much options unless you're willing to chuck ever-present utility Chris Atkin in a dummy half. So hooker stocks are a bit low in Paul Rowley's squad. And once, like I said, Salford and Leigh have probably got the lightest squads out of all 12 teams for just the fact that they have the least amount of players currently in them.
True, but even when we had like Andy Ackers.
Yep.
Yeah. If he went down injured, but we had like what's his name come in?
Amir Burrow, I'm just mentioning.
Yep, him. And we still somehow managed to fill those positions when we had injuries. We had a bit of an injury toll on the side. I don't know how, but we still somehow did it.
Well, that's the question moving forward, and I think it's a big question that needs to be addressed early, or it's going to be a long year. Now, Salford, they finished 6th, making it as far as the semi-final, beating all expectations, and nilling Huddersfield in 3rd.
Yes.
Can Salford go back-to-back playoff appearances again?
Yes. Not being biased. I'm dead set serious. I think we can.
With the biggest cheesy grin right on your face, I can honestly say to God, that is not true. That is a bold-faced lie.
Mate, I could have been biased and said they're going to take out the league leaders shield, but I said Huddersfield, so I'm not that biased.
Wow. So generous saying that they're not going to finish first.
No, but seriously, if Sneed and Croft link up very well together again, and I know we've got like a very light roster, but if we can improve on that, we should be able to get into playoffs back-to-back seasons.
So, where does Salford finish in your so impartial judgment?
3rd.
3rd on the table.
3rd on a table.
So you're asking for an early playoffs exit then?
I know it's a bit of a, bogey spot, but 3rd.
2 clubs finished 3rd over the last 3 years. They all got knocked out in the elimination final.
I know.
Want to risk it?
I'm risking it, but we could potentially do it. Potentially, I add.
This is the second time in the last 5 years that Salford have had both the Man of Steel and a spot in the grand final, albeit the losing side. The following year, they didn't back up very well. Mind you, they did lose Jackson Hastings for the 2020 season. They haven't lost Brodie Croft yet.
They extended his contract, I believe.
Or close to extending it.
Or close to extending it, yes.
I'm not as optimistic as you are. I think...
Of course you're not, because you made us chose to relegate us last year, and look what happened.
I honestly believe that was the case, and Toulouse would make it, because, French Rugby League growth, that's all I was thinking about there. But in all seriousness, there's going to be a lot of competition. I reckon there's going to be a target on crossback. Clubs will easily work him out, as you would expect any reasonable side to do. There'll be some clubs that won't get it right, and there'll be those at the very top that will. It's going to cut it fine, but between Catalan, Warrington, and Salford, I think the two former sides to Salford's latter, they go on, and we'll talk about why I think Warrington will bounce back into the playoffs at the expense of Salford next week. I will say the Salford Red Devils in their 150th anniversary will finish 7th on the table, only just missing out on a top 6 finish. And on that note, it is full time here from us. If you like this one or episode 1 of season 3 from last week, make sure you leave this one a like, hit that subscribe button, and click the bell for notifications so you never miss a week of rugby league action. Don't forget to give us a follow on our social media. On Facebook and on Instagram, it is at Sideline Chat, and on Twitter, it is at Sideline Chat RL. Of course, one of our hashtags alongside Side Chat Whitey. Hope you enjoy your week ahead, and next week we'll wrap up the Betfred Super League. Can Warrington bounce back into the playoffs? What fortunes await St. Helens and Wigan? Can they make another grand final? Or will Wakefield finally do us a favour and drop to the championship? Find out next week. Along with Mark Henry, I'm Con Marcellus, and you have been listening to the Sideline Chat. We'll see you next week.
See you later, folks.